you have to learn to listen to your aquarium. And what I mean by listen is use your eyes. If your eyeballs are working properly, then you'll probably see a metric ton of floating algae in the Avatar tank. This is actually going to serve as a perfect example of how to interpret what your tank is trying to tell you. And I think it's fair to say that this tank is definitely telling us something, but this is going to apply to a bunch of issues you might have with your fish tank. You're probably wondering why I let this tank even get to this point. It's mostly because it's a great TikTok video, sucking all the algae out with a tube. I know it's embarrassing, don't judge me too hard for it. Let's get a bucket and a tube, and we'll get this part out of the way so we can finally get to exactly what I'm talking about. Now that we can actually see through the tank, let's talk a little bit about how you can properly interpret an issue with your fish tank. So this, again, is a great example. Let's take a look at a few different pieces of evidence. The first being that we have obviously something out of whack, right? That's why we have all of the algae taking over. This particular kind of slimy stuff, this slimy style of algae that looked like it was growing everywhere. And then we also have some blackbeard algae on the back of my scraper here and on some of the wood, the fixed pieces in the aquarium. Some of the pros out there might also notice the bladder wart. That's a different issue, something that's really hard to deal with. Let's focus on the algae. Algae can be caused by a multitude of different reasons, not just light. I think most people go to that conclusion right away, but here in this case of this issue, I really do think it's the light, and I'm gonna show you why I think that. The first reason is because we have this rotala that snuck in as just one piece when we set up the aquarium, growing up here in the front and staying really low. That tells me that this light is putting out enough light to where this plant doesn't need to grow up and reach for it. So in the case of that plant specifically, it's good to go. It's under a highlight situation. Now we have all these other plants in here, primarily being moss, much closer to the light source itself. So that tells me, again, we probably have too much light going into this tank. Another reason is because, at least you could tell early on in this problem, that we have most of that slimy algae growing under this portion of the rocks. Now it's migrated itself all over this tank, but if we look back into the back of the aquarium, which is farther away from this light fixture, we don't have nearly as much. So the logical thing to do in this particular circumstance is to reduce the light. We don't know how much to reduce it. It's going to be a trial and error thing, and we're not going to be able to solve this overnight. What we need to do now is, of course, do as much manual removal as we can. That's kind of our only option here. You're not going to be able to do an amount of water changes to deplete the nutrients and solve the problem on its own. We have to get in there and we have to cut this infection out. I know the tank still looks a little crazy, guys, but I just don't want to be doing so many recurring water changes that we get the temperature too cold, okay? So we're going to take a break tonight. We're going to do one more thing, and we'll talk about that here in just a second, but I just want to show off kind of the work that we did here. Not perfect. You'll see that there's a lot of debris still in the tank. We're just going to have to do that over time. It's just the nature of this aquarium. Being filled with moss, doing all the cuts, it's going to get everywhere. So you're not going to be able to get all of it unless you really go ham on it. But I think we're in a good place with the manual removal. We got a lot of this stuff out, and the tank is actually looking like a tank again. So because this is such an invasive case of algae, I think the only way to get completely out of this is to add some chemicals. So we're going to throw in some of the algae clean out. It's something that I don't do all the time for algae problems, but in this case, I think it makes a lot of sense. So we're going to fill up one cap here. That's going to dose 50 gallons. This tank is roughly 50 gallons, and we're just going to let it do its thing. So I've seen results from this in about 24 hours. So let's dose the tank and then come back tomorrow and see if we can see any difference. Walking down to the tank the next morning, guys, not even probably 12 hours later, we can already see that that algae out has started to work. So those white pieces of whatever you see, that is remnants of that particular slimy green algae that has died off. If I look around the tank, I can see numerous spots of it that we just didn't happen to get out of the aquarium. The other thing I did want to show off is that the blackbeard seems to be pretty much unaffected by it. So we'll go in and spot treat it with a little bit of hydrogen peroxide. That should do the trick. If I look around some of the other areas of the tank, I can still see some spots where that algae didn't get affected by the treatment. So we're gonna add probably a half dose more, and then that hopefully should get all the rest of it. So when I turned the lighting down a little bit on the tank yesterday, I kind of remembered that we didn't have this thing on full blast or anything to start with. It was already at like 50%. So that just goes to show you how strong these ONF lights are. I mean, for this particular style of aquarium, maybe this high-end, high-powered light fixture isn't the best thing, but we're gonna keep using it. It fits the aesthetic down here, you know, it matches the other two. So I have it knocked down another couple tens of percents, so it's down to about 25 or 30, and we're hoping that does the trick. Visually, I know it might be hard for you to tell, but it is considerably dimmer than it was before. And to further kind of get the light out of that particular area where it was really concentrating that algal growth, I've moved the light fixture up even farther, so it's almost at the front of the tank. So, I mean, not maybe the best thing, it's gonna create a little bit more darkness in the back, but I kind of think that it helps to scale the scape a little bit. We still have a lot of manual removal to do in here. We got to get in and probably spend the next couple of days doing little water changes where we spot remove debris and of course that dying algae. Probably go through and trim this thing again. I mean, right now it doesn't look great. The treatment does discolor the water a little bit. Not sure if you can pick that up or not. So this is just an ongoing project. We'll be able to see if it's working once we get down the line a little bit. None of these changes you're going to notice an effect right away other than the spot treatment of the algae killing it, right? So to see if our changes to the aquarium with the lighting made any difference, it's just going to take some time. Alright guys, it's a few more days into the future. Our tank is still doing pretty good. As I've said a million times in this video, guys, we have to wait a little bit longer to see if what we did is really going to have an impact. But in the interest of getting this video out to you guys, we have to call it a little short here. I hope this video helped a few people out there that are experiencing some issues with their tank. Maybe it's pertaining to algae, or maybe it's something else and you're just kind of inspired to maybe pay a little bit more attention. Go into that Google search one more time to see if you can identify what's going on. See if there's other people that have had the issues that you're having. This tank is long from over as far as working on it and trying to get it to a better spot. We have probably, maybe hard to see, but all of this bladderwort in here, this nuisance plant that is going to be really tough to get rid of. I need to go to the Google search and see if there's anything that I don't know about getting rid of that stuff. So guys, if you're having issues with your aquarium, just hang in there. There is a light at the end of the tunnel, I promise. So hopefully after watching this video, guys, you are listening to your aquarium a little bit more, seeing if it's trying to tell you exactly what it needs to solve the problem that you might be facing. At least you're cognizant of that a little bit more now. That was the goal of this video. So I think that's going to do it. If you want to support the channel, the sticker store is the best way to do that, and you get some really cool stickers out of it. I will also be at Aquashella Orlando in a few days if this gets put out on a Wednesday. Hope to see you guys there. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.